Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back again to our new normal class in 2021. By the way, I am Jocelyn M. Baez, and from now on, I am your new subject teacher in technology and livelihood education in handicraft production. This lesson will be your third quarter in week 1 and 2 in grade 7. Welcome to the world of handicraft. This module covers three lessons that a grade 7 or grade 8 technology and livelihood education or TLE student like you ought to understand as shown below. Each lesson is directed to the attainment of one or two learning outcomes. Our topic for today is all about produce embroidered article. There are two learning outcomes. At the end of this lesson, you are expected to do the following. First, we have LO1, use basic tools in embroidery. And last but not the least, we have LO2, create embroidered article. But before we will proceed to our discussion for this afternoon, let's have an agreement first. Be a good listener, and if you like to become a good listener, only your eyes and ears open. Is that clear? Okay, let's proceed to definition of terms. Embroidery, the art of designing with needle and thread. Fabric, any woven, knitted or filled cloth. Thread, a very fine cord composed of a strand or strands of spun silk, flax, or cotton used in sewing. Design, arrangement of line, form, color, and texture with the purpose of achieving order and beauty. Learning outcome 1. Use basic tools in embroidery. There are three kinds of performance standard. First, we have the basic tools and materials in embroidery are identified. Second, different embroidery stitches are performed based on the given steps. And last but not the least, we have proper use of tools is observed. Development of Philippine embroidery. Embroidery is the ornamentation of textiles and other materials with needlework for personal use and decoration not only at home, but for offices as well. The term embroidery is an English word derived from the Old French embroiders, meaning the edge and the border. Embroidery was introduced into the Orient by the Netherlanders in the 15th century. It was brought by the Spaniards into the Philippines where it has made a wonderful growth, and work done it rivals the best work done in Switzerland, a country noted for its exquisite embroidery. Embroidery reached its highest development during the Middle Ages. The nuns in the convents were the first to make articles with embroidery work during their leisure time. Since then, it became so popular that women started to enjoy it, creating designs of their own. In the beginning, embroideries were done by the engaged in the machine embroidery. Today, because of the fast growth of the industry, elegance of designs, and fineness of workmanship, Filipinos export articles with embroidery work. Embroidery work is the best achieved if current tools, with correct tools and materials are used. Tools refer to small or handy devices, instruments used in sewing, while materials or supplies are those that are consumed in finishing a project. Below are the tools and materials used in embroidery, its uses, and maintenance. Tools. The first tools, we have the gauge, used to measure short distance. Next, we have tape measure, used for measuring more than 1 foot distance or materials. Thimbles, made from metal or plastic, protect the middle finger and push the needle while doing your embroidery work. This comes in sizes 6 small to 12 large. Embroidery hoop or stiletto, made of wood, bone, metal, or plastic, used to make eyelets in the fabric to be embroidered. It is also used to keep the fabric stretched while embroidery stitches are applied on the design. It is advisable to place tissue paper over the inner hoop or twist or wrap the inner hoop with a thin material to prevent markings on the fabric. Embroidery scissor is a small, sharp, and pointed good for fine work used for trimming scallops, clipping threads, and cutting large eyelets. Protect the blade by keeping them in a sheath or cover and get them sharpened occasionally. Next, we have needle threader. It's used for easier threading, especially by those sewers with poor eyesight. Pons is fine powder used in transferring design by pricking method. Okay, let's proceed to embroidery needle, a short piece of steel with a fine point at one end and a little opening or eye at the other. The kind of embroidery work to do and the kind of thread to use are two things to be considered in choosing your needle. Needles should always have a fine tip so that they can easily move in and out of the fabric. Do not use a needle which is bent, without a point, or rusty. This will affect the regularity and neatness of work. Protect your needles by storing them in a needle case. The sharpened needles or make pins last longer by rubbing them with an abrasive material such as sandpaper or heavy wool. Keep in mind that pins and needles are one of the most inexpensive notions used. Simple care and knowing when to discard them are key. It is recommended to discard your needle after 8 hours of use, usually when the threads of fibers start breaking and you feel it falling on your fabric instead of gliding through it. Quill. Sizes 1 to 10 are sharp-pointed, medium length with large eyes. For easy threading, they are used for most standard embroidery stitchery. Chenille. Sizes 30 to 26 are also sharp-pointed needles, but they are thicker and longer and have a larger eyes. They are that type of needles appropriate for embroidery that is worked with heavier yarns. Tapestry needle is from sizes 13 to 20. They are similar in size to chenille, but are blunt rather than sharp. This makes them best for thread counting, embroidery, and for the needle point as well. Watercolor brush, used for transferring the design using pricking and punching Methods. Pin cushion, a place for pins and needles. Tracing paper, used for tracing designs. Sewing box, used to keep together or the embroidery tools and materials. Next, we have the bag. To keep work clean and fresh, have a bag made from washable materials to hold your work when not busy on it. Okay, those are belong to tools. Let's proceed in materials. The first materials, we have the fabric. Sometimes referred to as cloth, are of great variety and they differ in material, weight, wave, design, color, and finish. And there are three types of fabric. The first types of fabric we have common weave, includes most tightly woven fabrics with a relatively smooth surface like linen. Wool and cotton, they are base used for articles with decorative stitches. The second types of fabric we have even weave, are intended for hard danger embroidery since the number of threads per square inch is same for both warp and woof. The last but not the least, we have basket weave. Is commonly used by beginners and remain learned by those who have been used to this embroidery. It supplies guidelines for cross-stitch and smoking, having an evenly spaced pattern like gingham cloth and polka dots. All fabrics should be pre-washed before using them for quilting or embroidery. The filler that is used in the fabric can cause havoc if it is not removed by washing prior to working with the fabric. The second materials, we have the thread. Thread is available in various types. They differ in terms of texture, fiber, content, number of strands, and colors. Threads are usually coded in numbers and colors named. They can be both in skeins, balls, or spools. The color of the thread should suit the color and texture of the design and the fabric to be embroidered. Okay, let's proceed to a proper care of embroidery thread. As one of the most essential elements to the stitching process, it's important to ensure proper and careful care of embroidery thread. Store it properly under controlled conditions to avoid the following issues. First, we have the thread dent. When a cone falls onto the floor, the point of impact can dent the thread, resulting in a weak spot or spots that can ultimately lead to problems as the thread travels toward the needle. This is a common problem for for those that store unused cones on top of their machine. Those cones will walk across the machine table due to the vibration of sewing and ultimately ends up on the floor. Second, we have discoloring and fading. Threads, especially rayon, will fade when exposed to sunlight for extended periods of time. If your threads are stored on a windowsill, or anywhere that sunlight can strike them full force, you risk fading and discolor. Length build up. Threads that sit out exposed to the elements of your shop's environment are prone to dust and lint building up. Over time, such build-up can sink down into threads. When the thread travels through the upper thread path, it takes the crude with it. This pincing it along the way onto critical surfaces, such as tensioners, that need to be remain clean and smooth. The end result will be inconsistent upper thread tension and possible thread breaks. Next, you have the brittleness. In addition to discoloring and fading, excessive exposure to sunlight can dry out the thread and lead to brittleness in the fibers. Obviously, this will weaken the thread and lead to excessive thread breaks. Embroidery stitches. There are various embroidery stitches which you can choose from when you do embroidery work for you to gain more skill on this line. Below are the illustration of some of the embroidery stitches which will help and guide you as you enjoy working on this lovely craft. First, you have the backstitch. Backstitch, the most often used to outline a design. This stitch also forms the baseline for other embroidery stitches, as you can see the picture. Next, we have the volume stitch, a single detached stitch that is used for filling in a design area. Rows of volume stitches may also be used to outline a design. It is recommended that one uses a needle with a small eye for ease in pulling. Number 3. Chin stitch, one of the more popular stitches used for outlining. When worked in close rows, chin stitches make good stitches for filling the design area. Number 4. Cross stitch. Stitch 4 by 2 crossing arms and may be used for outlining as borders or to fill in an entire area. Number 5. Feather stitch. A stitch with a loop and stitches evenly work on both left and right sides of a design area. Number 6. We have the fishbone, a kind of filling stitch which is ideal for making leaves or feathers. It requires us to divide the pattern into two and each inside is filled alternately, giving it a plated effect in the center, thus ideal to make leaves or feathers. 7. Fringe knot. A single detached stitch is used primarily to fill in a design area. It is a popular stitch among embroiderers in that it can be used to create the eyes on an embroidered face or the center of a flower. Number 8. Herringbone stitch, a basic overlapping stitch popular for its use in borders. Number 9. Lazy daisy chain stitch, also called detached chain stitch. This stitch is worked in a circle to resemble the petals of a flower. Number 10. Loop stitch, a very decorative stitch and can be experimented with threads for various color over borders. Close layers of each stitch can create wonderful effects on a pattern. Number 11, we have running stitch, considered being the easiest stitch for outlining. Number 12, satin stitch, a solid filling stitch that is used to cover a design area with long, straight stitches worked very close together. Number 13, split, done using quite thick threads such as wool. It was used as an outlining stitch or as a filling stitch. Number 14. Seed, also known as rice grain stitch. Stitch uses simple straight stitches in a single direction to fill in patterns. It has shorter stitches above the fabric and longer stitches on the reverse side. They remind of strawberry seeds, probably which inspired its name. Number 15. Stem stitch. Basically an outline stitch, this stitch is usually used for flower stems and outlines. It can also be used as filling rows of stem stitch work closely together within a shape until it is filled completely. Okay, those are the 15 lovely craft and embroidery stitches. Let's proceed to backstitch. The first thing to do in backstitch, first we have bring the thread through A and take it in through B. This creates one stitch. Letter B. Bring the thread through C and take it in through B. This way we are creating a stitch by taking the thread backward. Letter C. Bring the thread through D and take it in through C. Continue this pattern to finish the design. Letter D. A finished line of backstitch will look like this. Number 2. Bullion stitch. The first thing to do, bring the needle out from A and put the needle through B at a desired length. Okay, the next thing to do in bullion stitch, bring the needle out through A again, then wind the thread around the needle as shown. The distance of one thread should measure the same as the distance between A and B. Too many or too least wraps will spoil the stitch. Then next, hold the wrap thread with your fingers and pull the needle out with the other finger. Keep pulling the needle completely in an upward direction till the wraps lay on the fabrics as shown above. Adjust and straighten the wraps in required and put in the needle back through B. Number 3. Chin stitch. The first thing to do in chin stitch, bring the needle through at the top of the trace line. Next, hold the working thread down towards the left with the thumb, and then insert the needle at the point where the thread has just come through and bring it up on the traced line about 1/16 or an inch 1.5 mm further along. Number 4. We have cross stitch. The first thing to do in cross stitch, bring the needle out from A and take it diagonally across to B. Bring it back again to C, which lies vertically below A. Then now put the needle into D, which lies vertically above B. You have made a single cross. Number 5. We have feather stitch. The first thing to do, we begin by doing a long tail daisy with the start point on A. The loop is angled out about 45 degrees since we are making a zigzag pattern while making the tail before going into the fabric. We wrap the thread around the needle as shown in the illustration. Then, the needle is put into C and brought out through D, again at an angle of about 45 degrees. Next, loop the thread around the needle as shown. This is to make the next long tailed daisy. And continue this procedure of making long-tailed daisies at 45 degrees angles. This illustration shows a portion of the feathered chain stitch. Next, you have the fishbone. To begin with, bring the needle out to point A, which is the top tip of line Y. put it on to B to make a single straight stitch. Now, bring the needle out from a point very close to A on the line X. Then put it into a point very close to B on line Y. Again, pull out the needles to a point very close to A on a line Z. This procedure of putting in the needle through X and Z alternatively will follow. Each time we will be connected X, Y, and YZ. Then letter D. Make sure all the stitch points lie close to each other to avoid any visible spaces. Letter E. Halfway through, our leaf would look like this. You can see the rib being formed, as you can see the picture below. And letter F. Once finished, the filled lip would look like this. As you can see the picture below in letter F. Number 7. Fringe knot. The first thing to do in fringe knot, bring the needle out through A. Then, now place the needle close to the fabric. Wrap the thread around it twice as shown. Keep the longer end of thread pulled with your fingers while putting the needle back in a point just close to A or even through A. As you can see the pictures below. Number 8. Herringbone stitch. The first thing to do, bring the needle out through the first stitch line at A. Now, take the needle in through B, which lies diagonally across A on the second stitch line. Then, take the needle backwards out through C, which lies near in B, as you can see the picture below in number 8. Letter B. Now the same procedure will be worked on the first stitch line. Take the needle diagonally across the D and bring the needle backwards out through A, as you can see the picture below in letter B. Continue to make such crosses on both stitch lines alternately. Make sure the diagonally stitches are parallel to each other to bring out the best look. As you can see the pictures below in letter C. Number 9. Lazy Daisy Chain Stitch. The first thing to do, bring the thread out through A. Put in the needle near A and bring it out through the point B. But don't pull the needle out completely. Now, loop the thread around the needle like we would in chain stitch. Pull out the needle out to tighten the loop. Put in the needle just outside the chain created and what will finish the lazy daisy stitch, as you can see the picture below in letter B. Letter C. This standalone stitch can be used freely to be a part of any design. Since I have decided to make a flower, I will proceed with making multiple lazy daisies around the marked stitch line, as you can see the picture below in letter C. Then, the completed flower made of multiple lazy daisies, as you can see the picture below in letter D. Let's proceed to number 10, loop stitch. The first thing to do in loop stitch, lay the foundation by doing a running stitch. Take a contrasting colored thread and bring it out from near the first running stitch, as you can see the picture below in number 10. Letter B. Start following the Pekingese stitch technique. Take the needle into the second stitch and come out through the first, making a loop. Continue this action of looping using the running stitch foundation as illustrated. And finish up the pattern for it to look like this, as you can see the picture below in letter B. Let's proceed to running stitch in number 11. The first thing to do, bring the needle out at 1. Then insert needle down at 2. Continue steps A and B working right to left to make several running stitches. Check that the stitches on both and wrong sides of fabric are of equal length, as you can see the picture below in letter C. Number 12. We have satin stitch. The first thing to do, bring the needle out from A and put it into B so that it makes a stitch which covers a small area between the stitch lines, as you can see the picture below in letter A. Now bring the needle back through C, a point very close to A. Continue this action over the two stitch lines. Once finished, the area is filled as shown. You will be spending as much thread on reverse sides as you do in the actual side of the fabric, as you can see the picture below in letter C. Number 13. Split. The first thing to do in split, bring out the thread out through A and put it in through B. Take the needle backwards to bring it out through C. Note that C lies halfway between A and B. While bringing out the thread through C, take it in between the thread, splitting it into 2. Again, put the needle in through D to bring it out through B, splitting the thread. Letter E. Continue this procedure to finish the stitch. The only thing to keep in mind is to split the thread when bringing the needle out in some way. It will give you a visual feel of chain stitch, as you can see the picture below in letter A. Next, the reverse of the fabric will give you a backstitch pattern, as you can see the picture below in letter F. Number 14, we have the seed stitch. The first thing to do, make rows of short running stitch as illustrated. You need not to row after row as long as the strawberry seed pattern is more or less maintained, as you can see the picture below in letter A. Then, try not bend with the curves of the pattern. The rows of the running stitch should essentially be done in straight lines, as you can see the picture below in letter B. Let's proceed in number 15, stem stitch. The first thing to do, bring out the thread through A and take it in through B. Take the needles backwards and bring the thread out through C. Make sure the point C lies over the stitch AB. You need to note that the point C lies about halfway through A and B. Also note that C lies on top of the stitch AB. So all of the subsequent stitch points will lie on top their previous stitch, as you can see the picture below in letter B. Letter C. Take the needle in through D. Try to mark D in such a way that the point B will lie halfway through CD. Bring the needle out through B. Letter D. So, the pattern of 2 stitches of the stem stitch will be as shown above. Okay, that's all for today. If you have any questions, clarifications, you can contact my cell phone number 090515714448. For your activity and test, just visit our GAITF link below. GAITF.sims.school/LCMS. Thank you for your listening. See you next week.